just to fuck him.
Yeah. And this perfectly segues into the other thing I want to talk about, which is how, Trump's allies continually, Trump keeps sacrificing his supporters for allies that keep dumping him. So Trump also unfollowed Benjamin Netanyahu off Twitter because Netanyahu, a man for whom Trump has sold out pretty much the rest of his supporter base, his entire platform, everything he ever stood for or claimed to stand for, everything, he gave it up for you, Bibi. He bombed Syria for you, right? And then, Netanyahu congratulates Biden and Harris. Biden and Harris have always been good friends to the state of Israel, and so I want to congratulate them on their win. And then Trump unfollowed him, yeah, that's right. That's what happens.
Yeah, so who are the only friends he has internationally?
Right. There's a map of countries that didn't recognize Biden's win, and it's Hungary, Brazil, North Korea, Mexico.
The axis is awesome.
Slovenia, I think,
and China.
Yeah. China
and Russia.
Yes.
I think from their perspective, it's probably just because they're they probably don't want to risk getting the current guy mad, so they're just going to wait till the last, because that they're not going to get punished by Biden for not saying, "Hey, good job."
Right, but Kim Jong-un
they can just say, "Oh, we wanted to wait till
then
everything was done. Everything was secure, and then we said, good job."
Yeah.
Whereas they could get punished by the current guy if they jump on the ship. He could go, "Fuck you."
Yeah, exactly. If Vladimir Putin recognizes Biden's win, then Trump's rolling tanks into Crimea to take it back. Yeah, Trump, that's what you got. You sold out, tried so hard, got so far, and in the end, didn't even matter. And so now, whenever Trump tweets about election fraud, and everybody who listens to this podcast knows this. We have to talk about it. Literally anything Trump says about the election, Twitter is fact checking at the bottom of the post. This claim about election fraud is disputed. This claim is disputed.
That's the thing.
Yeah, it's learn more about
that. They then show you the correct where you got it wrong. They just go, "This is wrong." And they put a thing over it. So you can't
Biden stole the election, and it's click here to learn about how Biden did not steal the election, citizen. It's getting fact checked in real time. Trump, aren't you glad you did something about social media? You didn't do that.
Now they're talking about Dominion, the company that runs the voting machines. Before, people were talking about the software. And I don't know if it's two separate things or if it's one thing with the double name, but it was Hammer and Scorecard. And somebody found out on Twitter that if you made a post that mentioned voting or election and then the word hammer, it would be blocked by Twitter. So they posted I used Arm & Hammer toothpaste before I went to go vote at the polls. And then it was at the bottom it said Twitter disputes this or whatever. This is misinformation. Which again, seems like they know something that we don't know about why, because I don't even know what that term scorecard are, but someone at Twitter knew you should not be talking about this, citizen.
If Trump did lose the election because of Democratic voter fraud, it's still entirely his fault because he had every possible opportunity. All the forces that are currently arrayed against him have been arrayed against him the whole time, right? Twitter is censoring me all of a sudden. You've been president this whole time. The Democrats are stuffing the votes. Trump had Jeff Sessions, who's the archetypical, white Dixiecrat, I bet Jeff Sessions would bring back the literacy test, right? For all his personality was portrayed by the media.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Jeff Sessions actually was a racist, who is, this right-wing guy from, was this Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, something like that. Jeff Sessions
is such a New Yorker.
Jeff Sessions has
one of those shitholes.
Sense, okay? Jeff Sessions he sounds like Colonel Sanders. All right, that's who he had, and Jeff Sessions was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna."
He looks like a Keebler elf.
Right, he was Keebler elf. He is the guy that you want. He's your attack dog against. You're gonna send all the immigrants back. He's gonna purge these Georgia's voter rolls, and then Jeff Sessions recused himself from the Russiagate, sham investigation, said, "I take no part in whatever this is about to be." And then Trump got so mad that he fired Jeff Sessions and then spent the next year dragging his name through the mud. And now it's I can't believe Georgia went blue because of all these fraudulent votes. It's man, if only there was someone who could have put a stop to that. Oh, well. Yes, Dan? Do you have anything to You gave me a look of like, seems like skepticism.
No, I mean, it does seem like it does. He's definitely been complaining about this
Yes.
since, I don't know, April or something. But what has he done? It seems like nothing. It seems like he almost wanted it to happen. That way, if he won, he could say he won, and if he lost, he could say it was stolen. I think that was his plan. I think his plan was make a lot of noise about it and just try to get my voters out there. And if I win, then I can say I'm the greatest. I won, even though they cheated. And if I lose, then I can just say they cheated, and I don't have to admit that I lost.
He called an advisory commission. It was called the Presidential Advisory Commission on Election Integrity, or we just called it the Kobach Commission, because it was the vice chair was Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach. The actual chair was Pence. And so it was called the Kobach Commission, and it was to investigate voter fraud. Chuck Schumer was very upset that this was happening, and he wrote an editorial calling on Trump to disband it, and he would try to deny the commission money. And so then Trump says, I'm going to create a commission to investigate voter fraud I think is being carried out by the Democrats. The head Democrat in the Senate says, don't you fucking dare look into this. And then Trump says, all right, I'm canceling this commission and all of its evidence must be destroyed. And then the media ran with this like, boom, no proof of any voter fraud at all, right? The Kobach Commission there's no evidence from it. Like, yeah, Trump ordered it all destroyed. And I guess one interpretation, which is admittedly reasonable, is that, it must maybe found Republican voter fraud and Trump was like, whoopsies, and then just smashed it. But again, also possible that this is again Trump being, a short bus rider. He said, oh, there's a problem, but I won't do anything about it because I don't want to step on the toes of my worst enemies. Right? I don't want to make Chuck Schumer mad at me. Now, granted, Trump's personal relationship with Chuck Schumer, given, where Trump is from and what he was, is probably like closer than it would ever be to Mike Pence, right? Trump is from New York. He was active in New York City's, real estate establishment. I'm sure Trump is like maybe not friends, right, with Schumer, but, calling Schumer Trump's worst enemy may not be entirely accurate. But you see the point here.
I think so.
We've already talked about the lawsuits. Yeah, Trump is throwing everything he can in these lawsuits, but he's throwing like this really flimsy evidence, like blatant hearsay. And Dan, you mentioned your perspective on this.
Oh, of course, yeah. But what would we expect him to do? Like, he never leaves anything on the table. So even if someone came to him and he had like a CIA briefing where they said, we proved that the software flipped this many votes in these different states, and we can prove in a way that no one could dispute that this happened and that it gave Biden the election, that you actually won, and here's the numbers, and you don't need anything else to prove it except this. He would still say, all right, but give me every fucking story you can find about these things, and we're going to flood the zone with them. Because if you gave him the silver bullet and said, that's all you need is this one shot and it'll kill them, he's still going to keep firing because that's just what he does. Plus, I think if they really think that there's something wrong with this software and that they can prove it, not that there's something wrong with it, but that they could prove it, I think that probably takes time. So in the meantime, what you want to do is just get lots of people, because he works on the persuasion level. That's what he does. He just wants to get lots of people talking about something that they could get them skeptical. Mm-hmm. So he wants to talk about dead people voting and all those little individual claims that are be found to be nothing. But the point is, even if they all add up to 5 votes, what they do is they make people go, did you hear about this dead guy voting, blah, blah, blah. And then that's all you need to actually convince people that it's fake. You don't need to actually prove that it's fake. You just need to give them reason to believe that something sketchy happened. So, of course, he's going to do that, even if he could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that there's something wrong with the software. But if you can't prove it, and this is still good to do too, like he's not going to leave that on the table and say, oh yeah, we have proof that some dead people voted, but it's only a few. No, he's going to go, yeah, do that too. Do everything. The question is, what fucking chance does he have when, ultimately we've all seen these things. You go into kangaroo court and you go, I don't know if we talked about it on the show, but Peter Schiff's dad, when he went to jail for writing a book about how you don't have to pay income taxes, if you go online and look at the transcript of that trial, he's not. Every time he tried to raise any defense, he just went, no, we're not going to hear that. Then at the end of the trial, they went, all right, it's done. And he never got to defend himself. So, like, that's just what they do. And they go, well, he didn't have any evidence because he didn't say anything. So, like, they just do whatever they want, and then the judge just says something, and then it's law. And then, yes, so imagine that. His legal team goes there and prove it. And the judge throws out that evidence and goes, that's not good enough. Right?
Yeah.
Then it's, well, it wasn't good enough. It was fake evidence. And those people, the 5 people who work for him, can go on TV all they want and say, no, this was good evidence. This was the shit, but they just threw it out. Who's going to believe them? Only the people who already believed them without the evidence. Like, the people who believe this are going to believe it even if you never produce a shred of evidence, because they'll just believe that, well, yeah, of course we couldn't get the evidence because they deleted it. And the people who don't believe it aren't going to believe it even if you could show them the evidence, because they'll just say the evidence is fake.
Yep.
So, how much longer will this last? Because if they don't do like another 9/11, then how are they gonna derail this train?
Oh, and that's a perfect segue to talk about. Speaking of things that really don't have anything to do with 9/11, this was the most infuriating story of, I think, the week. Really, the past 2 weeks. Let me just. Jim Jeffrey is the United States ambassador he's our special envoy to Syria. He's not in Damascus where the actual government is, because the United States is trying to overthrow the Syrian government, but he is our ambassador to the Syrian government that doesn't exist, but we want to exist.
Yeah.
He signed the Never Trump letter, that said that, Trump was a danger to the United States, and he stayed ambassador the whole time. You might say to yourself, now hang on a second, doesn't President Trump have the authority to fire ambassadors? Maybe an ambassador that says that you're a danger to America, wouldn't you not want him to be anywhere near the most controversial part of your foreign policy, your plan to withdraw from Syria, or to defeat ISIS, then withdraw from Syria? He admitted, it was very funny. It was very funny to him and to, all the people in the defense establishment that, he was lying to that dumb loser Trump about how many troops there actually were in Syria, right? Because Trump wanted to withdraw, so he said, quote, he was constantly playing a shell game. We were always playing shell games to not make clear to our leadership how many troops we had there. Jeffrey said in an interview, the actual number of troops in northeast Syria pretending to guard the Kurds is, quote, a lot more than the roughly 200 troops that Trump initially agreed to leave there in 2019. Because Trump said we're withdrawing them all. And then he was somehow talked into leaving a few, and he said, okay, I'll leave 200. And then they just an innocent accounting error. Basically, they said, okay, we're going to leave 200,000 right troops in Syria.
Are you saying that the people in charge of counting the troops might have fudged those numbers?
Right.
That's another good point that goes to show how all people think that you can't add a couple numbers on a voting software, when you can literally have 200,000 human beings in one place that are supposed to be somewhere else and nobody finds out.
Yeah. To be clear, there were not 200,000 troops in Syria. I was just giving that as a point of example to say, how many there actually were. It was only 2,000 or something. It was a lot more than 200 is the point here.
2,000. That's a lot of people to go missing. And we would still not know about it if he didn't tell on himself. We would still think they weren't there.
These people, I see really why Alex Jones, these people are literally demons. Straight from hell. Again, this is partially Trump's fault for blinking and saying he'd leave a few hundred and not firing this guy. There's a certain scene from a certain movie, you may know it, where a certain leader goes on a very long tirade about his military command staff. He accuses them of being, among other things, wicked, faithless cowards. Nothing but cowards, traitors, and failures. The scum of his relevant group's people. With no honor, all right? He would have done well to have had them all liquidated years ago, like Stalin, right? The idea, it's insane. It's truly mind-boggling. I can only express just these vague feelings
and yet,
of outrage and hurt and offense that these people, these so-called people, they just are just laughing that they lied to the president to keep a war going longer than it was. Imagine if those troops had carried out some kind of provocation that led to an escalation of the war. Trump had to find out only then. Oh yeah, there was like some Syrian army troops ended